Television. You make it happen.
This week on Sneak Previews, our annual Best of the Year show, where we look back on all the films we saw in 1993 and pick out the very best of what turned out to be a surprisingly strong year for movies, with an abundance of fine titles that deserve enthusiastic cheers. Now, nearly everyone seems to agree that 1993 marked a welcome turning point for Hollywood, as movies improved in artistic quality at the same time that box office returns went up. For once, we had an abundance of major releases that deserved consideration for our lists of the 10 best of the year, which we're proud to share with you on this special show, where we'll also anticipate some of the Oscar nominations, which are scheduled to be announced on the morning of February 9th. I'm Michael Medved.
And I'm Jeffrey Lyons, and my list of the best films reflects the great year of movies it was. For it includes an amazingly wide array of films, which we'll be listing for you in the order they were released during the year. And none was more unusual than a quirky little Mexican movie which opened quietly in January, but which incredibly is still around, playing to a growing cult audience. Like Water for Chocolate, set on a Mexican ranch in 1910, concerns a young woman forced to care for her stern, demanding mother, rather than marry the one man she truly loves. Then Denzel Washington, Keanu Reeves, and other members of a superb cast which also included Robert Sean Leonard and the director, Kenneth Branagh, rode into theaters in Much Ado About Nothing, one of the most rousing, beautiful adaptations of Shakespeare ever set to film, all shot in the lush, romantic hills of Tuscany.
Sam.
Sleepless in Seattle from director Nora Ephron was a huge hit and starred Tom Hanks as a lonely, grieving Seattle widower whose conversation on a national call-in radio show touches the heart of Meg Ryan, listening in a continent away.
Sam, tell me what was so special about your wife.
Well, how long is your program? Oh, well, it was a million tiny little things. If when you added them all up, it just meant that we were supposed to be together. And I knew it. And I knew it the very first time I touched her. It's like coming home. Only to know home how I'd ever known it. I was just taking her hand to help her out of a car. And I knew it. It was like magic.
King of the Hill deserved more attention than it received, but I was deeply touched by this movie, directed by Steven Soderbergh, who's best known for Sex, Lies, and Videotape. This is the true story of writer A.E. Hotchner, left to his own devices as a boy in St. Louis, when his loving family came apart during the depths of the Depression. And The Joy Luck Club, based on Amy Tan's best-selling novel, is still in theaters. This is the sweeping saga of 8 Chinese-American women and is a contrast between the old ways and the new, in a movie with characters so vivid and alive, they quickly become important to you. Whereas there have been many films about fathers and sons, this is one of the most powerful movies to explore the delicate, often painful bond between mother and daughter.
Mommy, I tell you the story because I was raised the Chinese way. I was taught to desire nothing, to swallow other people's misery, and to eat my own bitterness. And even though I taught my daughter the opposite, but still, she came out the same way. Maybe it is because she was born to me and she was born a girl, and I was born to my mother and I was born a girl. All of us like stairs. One step after another, going up, going down, but always going the same way.
Joy Luck Club was a terrific movie. I agree with you on that. My only reservation about it was maybe a little bit too much of a good thing. It used all 4 sets of mothers and daughters that appeared in the book. I think it might have done better with just 3, but it's an interesting point here because like 3 of your other selections, all 3 of them are based on novels, and the screenplays were adapted by the novelist. That was true of the A.E. Hotchner book of King of the Hill, of the Joy Luck Club, where Amy Tan did the screenplay, co-wrote the screenplay with Ron Bass. And it was also true of the Laura Esquivel, who wrote Like Water for Chocolate. And I think it says that if you've got a good writer who's done a brilliant book, well, let them write a great screenplay.
Well, Like Water for Chocolate is an amazing movie. She takes out her frustrations by making these exotic and erotic dishes in the kitchen. And even if you know and care nothing about cooking, you can really get into it. You can almost smell these dishes coming out and understand how she's living her life, her repressed life, through her talent in the kitchen.
Yeah, this is a very sensual movie, but not just sensual in the sexual sense, though it's that too. There's the sensuality of the kitchen and food and touch. And you know, you mentioned that it has a cult following. It has more than that. You know, Like Water for Chocolate this year became the top grossing foreign language film ever released in the United States. I've got to say, that's the only one of your selections where I don't entirely go along with you. I thought it was an intriguing film rather than a fully successful one.
Nothing like you've ever seen before, right?
Absolutely true.
And I wish more people had seen King of the Hill. It's going to come out on video soon. A.E. Hotchner grew up to be one of Hemingway's collaborators, or his closest confidant. He was his editor and worked with him and one of his dearest friends. And what a wonderful look back at another time they used the original old clothes that they wore and filmed it in St. Louis, and you get a feeling of the desperation of the Depression.
But you know what it did? It didn't show that sort of world of the Depression with this glow of nostalgia. It showed sort of some of the shabbiness, some of the harshness, like some of those wonderful old Walker Evans photographs, and a brilliant performance by a young man named Jesse Bradford, who showed rare intelligence. You know, I think one of the things you could talk about in 1993, in many ways it was also the year of the boy, with so many good roles for young men, from everything from Free Willy to A Man Without a Face.
Sleepless in Seattle, too.
And certainly in this film. Well, now it's my turn to present the first 5 titles on my list of the best of the year, again appearing here in the order in which they were released during the year. And it turned out that in 1993, the year's best comedy, for my money, was also one of the first to turn up in movie theaters. That was Groundhog Day, with Bill Murray as an obnoxious weatherman who's assigned to cover the annual groundhog ritual in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and is condemned to live that same day over and over again until he gets it right. Murray shows surprising romantic chemistry with his co-star Andie MacDowell in a picture that delivers some uplifting messages along with abundant laughs. Now, I know that some people may snicker at the idea that I'm choosing a movie about 3 lost pets as one of the year's very best, but Homeward Bound is classic family fare that will move both children and parents to tears. And 2 dogs and a cat here are played by the voices of Sally Field, Michael J. Fox, and the late Donna Michi, crossing rugged wilderness to reunite with a family that's been forced to give them up. Like Jeffrey, I loved Much Ado About Nothing. I don't think there's ever been a better screen adaptation of a Shakespeare comedy, thanks largely to the incomparable electricity between director Kenneth Branagh and his wife Emma Thompson, playing those cocky, sharp-tongued rivals, Beatrice and Benedict.
But it is certain I am loved of all ladies, only you excepted, and I would I could find in my heart that I had not a hard heart, for truly I love none.
A dear happiness to women. They would else have been troubled with a pernicious suitor. I thank God and my cold blood I am of your humour for that. I had rather hear my dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me.
God keep your ladyship still in that mind, so some gentleman or other shall scape a predestinate scratched face.
Scratching could not make it worse, and for such a face as yours were.
Well, you are a rare parrot teacher.
A bird of my tongue is better than a beast of yours.
Would my horse have the speed of your tongue? But keep your way, in God's name, I am done.
You always end with a jade's trick. I know you of old.
And who could resist Sleepless in Seattle, where Tom Hanks' 8-year-old son, played by Ross Mallinger, wants his widowed father to meet a Baltimore reporter who's written to them. And neither father nor son realizes that the woman who happens to catch Hanks' eye at the airport is the same person that fate and this little boy have picked out for him. And then there was yet another glorious family film, The Secret Garden, based on an enduring classic of children's literature and beautifully brought to the screen by Agnieszka Holland, director of Europa Europa. It tells the story of an orphan girl at the turn of the century who goes to her uncle's gloomy estate on the British moors and helps her crippled cousin to find new strength from the secret garden that she's discovered and brought to life.
Go along, Honker. Wish I could help.
Don't worry. We'll have you walking with us before you know it.
Me? Walk? Do you think I could?
Well, you have legs like everybody else, don't you?
Yes. But I never thought I... Close your eyes, Colin. Am I there? Almost. now. Yes. I imagined this.
Well, we agree on 2 out of 5 so far, Michael. That's not a bad average. I did not like The Secret Garden when I saw it on stage. Maybe the earlier movie versions are okay. I just couldn't get into it. I found it very dreary, that being about the only tolerable
Dreary?
scene.
That was
You yourself
glowing and
said on the
luminous.
gloomy moors of England.
Yes,
with
but
these
of course
pale-looking English
they
kids. I was
respond
so
with the
depressed
sun
by
and
it.
the spring to the gloomy moors.
But it does take some courage on your part to pick Homeward Bound as one of the year's 10 best films. A good family picture.
You know,
the voices of the actors are what made it good.
Everybody that I know cried when they saw Homeward Bound. Okay, so Ian, what more do you want from a picture if it entertains parents and kids alike?
And it tells me a lot about you that you pick a very quirky, successful film like Groundhog Day, which I found a very offbeat comedy, unusual comedy. I liked it a lot. Not enough to put on my list, obviously, but Bill Murray was very good because he evolves in it from this obnoxious wise guy into a nicer guy.
I thought he was spectacularly good. And what I liked about it so much is it not only gives you laughter, but it gives you lots of things to think about as he sort of learns lessons from living the day over. I mean, I think everybody's wanted at one time or another to take a day or a week or maybe sometimes a year over again. And speaking of taking things over again, I mean, when you go back and look at these films and the Oscar nominations that are going to come from them, I'll tell you one sure Oscar nomination, I think a likely Oscar winner, is Patrick Doyle, who wrote the glorious music to Much Ado About Nothing. He also had collaborated with Kenneth Branagh on the music to Henry V. That deserves to win the Oscar for Best Musical Score.
I'll go out on a limb and say maybe Kenneth Branagh will be nominated for Best Director.
Sure deserves
Emma
it.
Thompson for something. She'll turn up later on in the show, too. Every year you can just plug her in. She's like the Meryl Streep of the 90s.
I'll tell you else who I think might be an offbeat, a long shot nominee is Nora Ephron for Best Director for Sleepless in Seattle, which we both loved. And she and Jeff Arch, who collaborated on the screenplay, will definitely be nominated for Best Original Screenplay for this brilliantly written piece.
And maybe they'll nominate your friend Shadow the doggy from Homeward Bound. Well, you never know. They picked Talk to the Animals
That's
one
the
year as
voice
best
of the
song.
late Don Amici.
You just
Come on,
never know
don't
with the
denigrate
Oscars.
it.
Well, now for the rest of the movies on my list. And first is a gritty look at a New York neighborhood 2 generations ago, and a movie which marked a stunning directorial debut of one of America's greatest stars. Robert De Niro directed and co-starred in A Bronx Tale as a hard-working New York City bus driver whose son has come under the influence of a local gangster, brilliantly played by Chaz Palminteri, who expanded his original one-man show into one of the year's most powerful screenplays.
Just leave my son alone, please. Don't you see how I treat that kid? I treat that kid like he's my son. He ain't your son. He's my son. He's what? He's my son. Come on, get the out of here. I'm not afraid of you. Well, you should be. I know who you are, Sonny. I know what you're capable of, and I would never step out of line. You could ask anybody in this neighborhood who knows me. But this time you're wrong. You don't fool with a man's family. This is my son, not yours.
What are you going to do, fight me?
You stay away from my son.
Get out of here before I give you a slap.
You just stay away from my son.
Go ahead.
I don't care who you are. You stay away from my son.
I wanted to leave you.
My Life, directed by Ghost screenwriter Bruce J. Rubin, was a tour de force for Michael Keaton. As a father-to-be who's got terminal cancer and is determined to cram a lifetime of experience into a long, loving video he's making for his unborn child. Keaton showed me a range and poignancy I never knew he had.
Basically 2 schools of shave, okay? Down, like that, or up, like that. Never, heartbeat, never, sideways, like that.
The Remains of the Day is a sweeping, absorbing, elegant, historical drama set on a huge English estate on the eve of World War II, with the great Sir Anthony Hopkins as a perfect English butler whose selfless devotion to his duties and his misguided master have made him sacrifice his one chance for love with the estate's housekeeper, Emma Thompson. And no surprise, Schindler's List, sure to sweep the Oscars, was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, lending new meaning to the word devastating, transporting you as no other movie ever has to the horrors of the Holocaust, telling the amazing story of a Nazi businessman who really saved a group of Jews from extermination, battling a sadistic camp commandant, played brilliantly by newcomer Ralph Fiennes.
Which of you has domestic experience? Yeah, on second thoughts, I don't really want someone else's maid. All those annoying habits I have to undo. I don't want to give you my call. What's her name?
Helen Hirsch.
What?
Helen Hirsch.
What? I can't hear.
Helen Hirsch.
Yeah.
And what a year for Sir Anthony Hopkins. He also starred in Shadowlands as writer C.S. Lewis, whose ordered life as an Oxford Don was shattered forever when he fell in love with a feisty American poet, Joy Gresham, played by Deborah Winger. This was the most powerful romance of the year. Winger and Hopkins, who never worked together before, had an amazing screen chemistry in this intimate, elegant love story.
How could Joy be my wife? I'd have to love her, wouldn't I? I'd have to care more for her than for anyone else in this world.
Well, you remember that I also loved Shadowlands, and the only problem with that picture for Oscar consideration is that Deborah Winger's competing against herself in a showier, I think, less successful role, by the way, in A Dangerous Woman, but I think she'll get nominated for that one. And Anthony Hopkins is competing against himself in Remains of the Day. He can't be nominated twice. And if he is denied an Oscar nomination, it would only be because of that kind of split vote for two great performances in two great movies.
Now, watching A Bronx Tale in New York, I could picture you in California saying, boy, this is Jeffrey's neighborhood. This is
I thought you were going to suggest that Anthony Hopkins had been cast in Bronx Tale, how it would have been different.
He could have done it. He's as great an actor. He could have been. But isn't Charles Palminteri wonderful? He's a playwright, a one-man show he wrote, and he expanded it to a fine screenplay working with Robert De Niro for the first time as a director.
He is absolutely great. He deserves a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. And I'll tell you, you know, De Niro, it's like he was born fully formed as a director with claws and teeth and hair. This is a brilliant directorial debut. He has a lot of the same touches as his old mentor, Martin Scorsese, but this film has more warmth and a softer tone, more tenderness than most of Scorsese's films.
So well cast. He used a lot of the real people of the neighborhood, and I wish My Life had done better business. Michael Keaton might have been nominated. People didn't want to go to a movie about a guy dying of cancer, but boy, was he poignant and touching. It's so touching, moving picture.
And it's also very funny. I mean, I think his performance was amazing, as you said, because he combines the humor and the pathos. And, you know, I think that you can say My Life was a little bit deliberate and manipulative in trying to milk every tear.
I was in the right mood for it.
Gosh, his performance was good. Nicole Kidman playing his wife was absolutely wonderful.
Without her accent, too.
And, you know, when you talk about Remains of the Day, movies don't get much better than that. I mean, James Ivory and Ismail Merchant and Ruth Prowler Jabvala have done so many great films in the past, from Howard's End to Room with a View. I think this is the greatest of all, and this is the one that'll be watched 50 years from now.
And until Schindler's List came along, that was my favorite of the year.
You know,
only picture that could top
Jeffrey, you and I have been spending too much time around each other because we agree on too much of the stuff now. Now, rounding out my list of the best of '93, we start with one of the all-time great sports films. That's right, Jeffrey, for you, a sports film that reminds us why we love underdogs, love America, football, and movies. This film is Rudy, a true story with Sean Astin as an undersized player who pursues an impossible dream of someday playing football for the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Now, the screenwriter and director of Hoosiers have brought this tale to the screen with great love and passion, as Rudy's long-shot quest needs all the help it can get.
Taking your appeal to a higher court.
I'm desperate. If I don't get in next semester, it's over, done. Notre Dame doesn't accept senior transfers.
Well, did a hell of a job, kid. Chasing down your dream.
I don't care what kind of job I did. If it doesn't produce results, it doesn't mean anything.
I think you'll discover that it will.
Maybe I haven't prayed enough.
I'm sure that's not the problem. Praying is something we do in our time. The answers come in God's time.
Have I done everything I possibly can? Can you help me?
Son, in 35 years of religious studies, I've come up with only two hard, incontrovertible facts. There is a God, and I'm not him.
And I certainly agree with Jeffrey that Remains of the Day is one of the year's most remarkable cinematic achievements, with the relationship between butler Sir Anthony Hopkins and housekeeper Emma Thompson sketched with amazing depth, heart, and subtlety.
You know what I'm doing, Miss Kenton? I'm placing my thoughts elsewhere while you chatter away.
Then why is that guilty smile still on your face?
Oh, it's not a guilty smile. Simply amused by the sheer nonsense you sometimes talk.
It is a guilty smile.
And of course we agree on Schindler's List, as does everybody else, a film that's unforgettable not because of its depiction of the horrors of the Holocaust, but because of the utterly persuasive way it shows its flawed hero, Liam Neeson, transformed by confronting those horrors. Many films have shown the seductive power of evil, but Schindler's List shows the seductive power of goodness, even in gruesome circumstances. And Shadowlands also earned a place on my list, as it did in Jeffrey's. Director Richard Attenborough brought a fierce intelligence and a rare spiritual dimension to this glowing love story involving C.S. Lewis, one of the great religious thinkers of our time. Anthony Hopkins is brilliant as usual, and Deborah Winger is in every way his equal, playing the utterly unlikely object of his affections. And completing my list is Germinal, a stunning, epic adaptation of an Émile Zola novel from director Claude Berry, who also did Jean de Florette and Manon of the Spring. The subject is a bitter coal miners' strike in France in the 1880s.
Évitons le massacre. Essayons de nous entendre. Je crois que vous pouvez comprendre notre colère. Au large, ne me forcez pas à faire mon devoir. Vous n'allez pas tirer sur les femmes et les enfants? Nous sommes sans armes. Allez, laissez-nous passer. Soyez raisonnables. Au large, je n'ai rien à entendre. J'ai l'ordre de garder ce puits et je le garderai. Et n'avancez pas sur mes hommes ou je saurai vous faire reculer.
Allez-vous-en! Nous n'avons rien contre vous, allez-vous-en!
Laissez-nous régler nos affaires entre nous.
Faut que je passe. Faut que les chevaux mangent leur avoine. Ils se foutent de la révolution, les chevaux. C'est bon, passez. Laissez-le passer! Reculez!
Now, the heavyset actor there was the great Gérard Depardieu as one of the miners in the protest scene. Now, if people don't know about this movie, we should say it only played at the end of December, 1 week in Los Angeles to qualify for Oscar nominations, but it will soon be getting a national release. It's a tremendous movie.
It sure is, and what a terrific year it is for foreign films with the Oscar competition. I mean, Farewell, My Concubine is sort of the early favorite, but I think Germinal is going to be a major factor when that race comes down to it.
Good for you for picking Rudy. You know, I was a walk-on at University of Pennsylvania. I was a field goal kicker, so the moment Rudy started...
You're not as small as Rudy,
well,
Jeffrey.
no, and I was a little bit better, I like to think, at my job. But, boy, I'll tell you, I really identify with the film. I was able to meet, eventually, the real Rudy, and he is an amazingly charismatic guy. And the film is to football what Hoosiers is to basketball.
Well, it is absolutely. And again, as I mentioned, it's the same screenwriter and the same director. The screenplay by Angelo Pizzo, as I think you can see in that scene, every line is beautifully crafted. It has almost a musical resonance to it. And I'm just sad that not enough people saw Rudy when it came out in theaters. Yeah. It'll be released soon on home video, and I think it deserves to be a tremendous hit there. Great family movie.
It shows you what a strange business this is, because it came out beginning of the football season. Notre Dame was in the news. They had a great year.
Yeah.
You would think people would flock after seeing Notre Dame on TV, maybe, on a Saturday afternoon, to go see that Saturday night. Didn't do that well.
And meanwhile, people are surprising everybody by flocking to see Schindler's List. I mean, who would think that a 3-hour, 15-minute black and white movie about the Holocaust would draw that kind of appeal? But I think it does, because I think we made this point at the time when we reviewed it. It's not just a depressing movie that's gloomy and dark. It has an inspiring tone to it. I think you come out of that film feeling uplifted, learning that one man can make a difference, or a woman.
You had said it was a great year for movies. We should mention other films, at least for me, which were very good films, maybe not quite among the top 10. The Fugitive. I like the special effects in Jurassic Park. You have to mention that somewhere. All-time winner. In the Line of Fire was Searching for Bobby Fischer. There are all sorts of good pictures.
I think of The Man Without a Face. Mel Gibson's movie deserves some mention. A little picture called That Night, which I like. This was a wonderful year where you actually had more than 10 films worth considering.
And now for the drum roll, for the best movie of the year. Now, you'll remember that last year we did something that we'd never done before in 7 years of working together on sneak previews. We both picked the same movie, Enchanted April, as the best movie of the year. Well, this year, we've done it again. We've agreed on our choice for Best Picture, and it's no surprise, Schindler's List.
And like I said before, Jeffrey, I think we're working together for too long, influencing each other too much. Well, 1993 was not only a noteworthy year for great films, but it also brought a memorable collection of spectacular stinkers. And we've each prepared our worst list of these breathtaking bombs. Counting down to the year's worst, my number 10 was Tom and Jerry the movie, an animated feature so bad it makes the old cat and mouse cartoons look like remains of the day. And Surf Ninjas combined the worst elements of two always classy formats, surfing movies and martial arts flicks. And Weekend at Bernie's 2 was a corpse comedy sequel that should have left poor Bernie to rot in peace. Poetic Justice featured a disastrous acting debut for pop superstar Janet Jackson, and what's turned out to be a less than thriller year for her family. Mr. Jones offered Richard Gere and Lena Olin in a soggy romance between a sexy sight psycho and a shy shrink, while Indecent Proposal earned a bundle of money at the box office, proving that our social problems may be deeper than we thought. Sliver featured Sharon Stone in what's supposed to be a sexy follow-up to Basic Instinct, but as for this one, basically, it stinks. Guilty as Sin starred Don Johnson, who's guilty as sin of overacting as a seductive serial killer. Boxing Helena suggested that true love can be expressed by amputating the limbs of your beloved, but even as a psychological shocker, it doesn't have a leg to stand on. And finally, my #1 choice is the year's worst, Body of Evidence, with the one and only Madonna as a seductress who's supposed to love men to death, but who represents a much greater threat of boring us to death in thrill-free thrillers like this one.
That's easy for you to say, Michael. Now for my worst of the year. The Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore howling at the top of his lungs, thinking he was being funny. The best performance was turned in by a turkey. Next up is A Far Off Place, billed as a children's movie, but so bloody it soon had me and my family wishing we were in a far off place. Jack the Bear, a mawkish drama which tried to be a tearjerker, but which had me crying enough already. The Dark Half, a stupid evil twin movie which continually challenged the actors to keep a straight face. The Seventh Coin, with an alarmingly gaunt-looking Peter O'Toole committing murders in Jerusalem. It played exactly 7 days in theaters. On the 8th day, I hope O'Toole rested. Made in America, with a fun couple of '93, Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson, an excruciating sperm bank comedy. Sliver, a sleazy, smarmy, psychosexual drama which soon drove audiences away in droves. Poetic Justice, again with Janet Jackson, who confused chewing her gum slowly with some sort of acting craft. Body of Evidence with Madonna in a nauseating vanity production. Will somebody get the Material Girl some decent material? And the worst movie of the year, Dangerous Games, again with Madonna, unconvincing as an actress filming a sleazy movie. She was desperately seeking talent.
So that's it for our annual Best and Worst of the Year show. Please join us next time when we'll review all the new movies in town. I'm Michael Medved.
And I'm Jeffrey Lyons. And until next time on Sneak Previews, don't forget to save us the aisle seats.